So let me begin with a slide that I always use when I'm giving the talk on bereavement. And this was written by a woman who her husband was killed in a motorcycle accident. And I think it does a great job in sort of summarizing bereavement from her perspective, but I use it at all the talks I give because I think you probably will see yourself in some of what she says. She told me that what she did is she put this on her refrigerator, so when friends and family came about a few months after her husband had died, she shared this with them. So first she says, please talk about John, that was his name, and she said it was okay to use it, even though he is gone. I need to talk about him, I need to do it over and over again. Basically, we live in a world that is very confused as to whether it's okay to bring up the name of the deceased or whether we should or we shouldn't. And as we talk about the holidays, we're going to find that that's a particularly difficult thing. And a lot of family stress occurs as a result of that. And so she's telling folks, absolutely, I want you to bring him up. I need to hear about him. The second thing she says is to be patient with my agitation. Nothing feels secure in my world. Again, people kind of don't really want you to be too upset. They kind of want you to get past these kind of things. And she's saying to the world, you just have to be patient with me. This is a very difficult time. Third, she's saying, and this one I hear all the time in counseling. People say this an awful lot to friends or about friends or whatever. Don't abandon me with the excuse that you didn't want to upset me. And what she's implying is that a lot of times friends will say, well, I didn't call you because I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to upset you, whatever. And from her perspective anyway, those friends were really abandoning her in the time that she really needed them. Fourthly, she says, get comfortable with my crying. Sadness hits me in waves. I never know when my tears might flow. Just sit with me in silence and hold my hand. What's interesting here is how she's discussing the whole idea of crying. And in my mind, as a bereavement counselor, there's no medicine better for someone than crying when it comes to this particular bereavement process. The problem is, and you've probably seen this already in your own life, that I like to say we don't do crying very well. We live in a society that's not big on it. And in fact, if someone starts to cry, we feel very uncomfortable. And what she's basically implying is, I hope you can get used to it because the reality is it's going to happen a lot. And then she goes on to say this idea that I don't know when it's going to happen. It just sort of happens sometimes, and I can't really explain why. And that's very, very true. This is like a wave, and it sometimes overtakes us. Then she says, just because I look good doesn't mean that I feel good. It's an interesting one that right there is how many people say something like, oh, you look really good today, or whatever. And she used to say to me, Henry, well, like, what did I look like yesterday? If I only look good today, and some implication. In fact, she said sometimes I even felt guilty when they said that because did it mean that I didn't look sad enough? What were they really trying to tell me? And so that was one of the issues that used to very much frustrate her. And then the corollary, if you will, to this is she says, ask me how you're doing only if you really have the time to spend to find out. She said so many friends would say, how do you feel, how are you doing? And then, especially if she started to cry a little bit or something, then basically they were out of there. They had something else to do. And no one really wanted to sit there and really journey that with her, and she found that hard. She goes on to say, my grieving may only begin a few months after his death. Don't think that it'll be over in a couple of months. Her whole world, she says, has crumbled, and it will never be the same, or I will never be the same. Certainly a grieving person early on, particularly in the process, has that sense that everything is over, that the world will never be the same. And the whole time frame, we're going to talk about that in a minute, about how long things take, what's the normal time frame for things. Then lastly, she says, spread the word about what I need. So few people know what to do. So her sense is that she lives in a world that very few people really know how to help her. And she goes on to say, but at the same time, I know what I need, but I don't really have the strength to tell everybody. So would you tell them for me? So I just find this to be a very nice summary of what a grieving person really needs. And as I said, I like to start with that.